on Severe Weather Central. Do want to mention real quick, apologize to listeners, we had some technical difficulties. They seem to be worked out now, so everything seems to be working the way it's supposed to, which is generally a good thing. Anyway, we're with Susan Strom, lightning photographer from Arizona. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
We're doing very, very well. Thank you for being on the program tonight.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay. And, well, let's just start off, where did you get this nickname, Lightning Lady, from?
Well, back in '99, I have to say that it was one of the best years I've experienced as a monsoon photographer. It was a bit of an El Nino year that year, and we had, I believe it was about 92 days of pattern. It ran from late June until a good part of mid-September. So I was taking a lot of lightning photographs to my pro lab in Tempe, and they kept seeing me bring in all this lightning and work with it, and I would ask them to print it and develop it, and it's a little tougher for them to work with the lightning, sometimes getting the images right. And so they called me the Lightning Lady because I kept bringing in a lot of film, and it's stuck. It's stuck since then.
Yeah, it's it can be very difficult to photograph lightning. Getting in the right place at the right time, making sure that your camera's pointed, that your camera isn't shaking too much. I've had that. Most of my chase successing has been with lightning myself, and it can be very very tricky to photograph lightning. How do you when you're approaching a storm to photograph lightning? What are the precautions you take, and how do you go about it?
There's a few things that need to be worked out for a good lightning photograph. You need to have a good foreground, and this is where the difficulty comes in. It's not a matter of just pointing your camera to the sky and hoping the lightning will strike. When you work out a really nice foreground with the lightning bolt, you're almost dealing with two photographic exposures in one composition. You have to calculate properly for the sunset or the city lights or the mountains or whatever you're exposing, as well as plan for the lightning. So I would advise that using slow-speed film in the traditional film cameras is helpful. Lightning is so bright that the fast film, it just doesn't expose properly. So I'm talking about maybe 50, 64, maximum 100 ASA. I also recommend getting a really heavy, sturdy tripod. Here in Arizona, our monsoon gusts, they can range from 40 miles an hour to even 100 miles an hour. So when you're out there and you're skirting close to a sandstorm and these high winds, you really need to either weigh your tripod down or use a really heavy bogan tripod and do the best you can to use things as windbreaks, anything you can do to keep your camera from shaking. If your camera shakes, what you'll get is a nice lightning bolt, but blurry foreground material, so you won't have the shot that you're looking for. So if you can keep that camera steady, then you're going to have a good shot at it.
Yeah, absolutely. I've had that issue before. Matter of fact, not too long ago, on May 19th, we had a tornadic storm come through central Indiana here. And,
wonderful.
It was in to Johnson County, Indiana, and lightning struck about, let's say about a tenth of a mile away. And I got it pretty good on film, but I was still kind of moving from right to left, because when it struck just off where I had the camera pointed. And when you put it on still photo, it was a little frustrating because it kind of made it fuzzy and kind of blurry. So for video it was okay, but a photography, one of those good glossy photos you put on posters and calendars and stuff, probably wouldn't work so well. But
you were probably dealing with 50, 60 mile an hour inflow winds coming in, or I can imagine that might be quite a challenge to get a good lightning bolt there in a tornadic environment.
Well, yeah, the winds were very gusty. It was along the warm front, a very, very strong warm front, like a 20-degree temperature difference on either side of it. And I was just north of the front, so it was quite breezy. It was southeastward moving storm, so the north winds were chilly, and it was quite breezy. And it was quite a storm. And later looked at the video too, and seeing where the lightning had actually came down at, there was a rotating column there.
Oh wow!
So it was actually out of the mesa where this lightning bolt came out of. So it was like right there, but it touched down.
Did you not see that until you got your film back? That's always such a great surprise when you see, you don't notice a feature or something really neat, and then you get your film back, and then wow, there it is. That's really
as a matter of fact, that actually was the case. It wasn't quite evident until we actually looked at the video footage. Me and James looked at the video footage and seen the cloud rotating. Fortunately, it didn't touch down. It would have been very, very close. If it had, it did eventually touch down later, about an hour later. It was a rain-wrapped, very weak tornado, but a good one. So, a tornado is a tornado.
Any tornado is a challenge when you're
absolutely. Yeah. And that was going to be, kind of stem to what I was going to ask you next. You was mentioning dust, when you have these 50, 60, 70 mile an hour winds come out, and out in the desert, there's dust everywhere. How do you deal with that when you're out there photographing, all of a sudden you see this huge blanket of dust coming at you from one of these downdrafts? Do you take shelter? Do you run and hide? What do you do?
It's called the haboob, and that word is an Arabic word that means wind. And it looks like something straight out of the Middle East. And it happens here in Arizona in the southwestern states of the United States. And it also happens in the Sudan and the Sahara in the Middle East. And you really see this amazing-looking wall coming at you. But incredibly enough, as ominous as it looks, as it's coming towards your city or it's coming towards the road, I just let it overtake me. And then what happens is these are sands from the desert. They're being kicked up from the outflow. And as you're driving through it, you just have to be very careful because you can drop to the zero viz almost right away. But if you need to pull over the side of the road, a lot of people say turn your lights off so nobody follows you thinking that that's the road. But I usually just let the haboob come and overtake me because I know almost certain that there will be lightning and thunderstorms for me to work with behind the dust wall. And what I find is that when I usually start chasing around 5 or 6 in the afternoon. I'll go to the central deserts of Arizona, and then I'll work my way back up north towards the Mogollon Rim and the Matazal Range.
Yeah.
This is an area about 2 hours driving time apart. And so I start with the sandstorm, drive through that, let it overtake me, and then I work with the storms in the central desert. The interesting thing about the sandstorm is one of the things I advise is getting a little eye protection because, when the sand's blowing in your face, it's kind of inconvenient. But one of the things that I find that's so interesting is that when you have sand in your photograph, it changes the color. The atmospheric conditions change, and you have pink and wine tones that are added to your photograph. When the sandstorm has passed, you get this rain-washed air, and everything becomes clear and blue, and you get, these turquoise tones and these royal blue colors. So you're really dealing with a real difference in the atmospheric conditions, and you just have to prepare, for that possibility that you're going to have those sandstorms to deal with. But they look worse than they are, really.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating, nevertheless, to see it or see a dust devil or anything related to thunderstorms or vortexes. I mean, nature is beautiful.
Absolutely.
Nature is mysterious and beautiful all at the same time.
That's right.
Again, we're speaking with Susan Strom, lightning photojournalist from Arizona. Now, you was mentioning there was a weather event back in July of 1994 that sparked your interest in storms. Could you tell us about that experience?
Yes, absolutely. I moved to Arizona from Northern California, where I spent pretty much my whole life. And in 1994, I moved to Arizona, and I really didn't have the understanding of the monsoon, the North American monsoon. I moved here in July, which was right in the middle of when the monsoon started. And back then, I wasn't really prepared for how violent the monsoon storms can be. Where I'm from, San Francisco and Sacramento, most of the weather news is fog, rain, earthquakes,
smog and the like.
A lot of stratiform kinds of systems that come in, Pacific gales, they're pretty strong, but not a lot of lightning, virtually, very few tornadoes. I get to Arizona, and I experience this huge dust storm and just the amazing amount of cloud-to-ground lightning, cloud-to-cloud lightning, just an incredible environment. Well, this one night, I believe it was September, early September, there was a storm that came through. It was warned on as tornadic. That my power went out, and I was at home alone in Scottsdale. And I looked out my window, and I looked to the south towards Mexico, and I saw this black-purple wall coming towards the city of Scottsdale. And it was being cut in half by these cloud-to-ground lightning bolts. And I thought, oh, this is just amazing. This is just like the plains, I thought. You know, just like the severe weather driving through Nebraska or something like that. What I didn't realize was when the storm came, it ripped out trees. The lightning was, so it was constant lightning. And it was hitting trees and hitting things. It was hitting rooftops. And there was a tree that was touching the roof of where I used to live, and it actually got hit by lightning, and it was split in two. And when the storm was over, this went on for about 2 hours. When the storm was over, the tree was a nice Y shape. And it had a burn mark. It had a burn mark going all the way down the trunk. And this wrought iron lawn furniture had been thrown into swimming pools. Big trees, these large eucalyptus trees all over town had been yanked out by the roots. I mean, this storm was really violent. And one of the things the monsoon does also is it cracks a lot of our wooden power lines. We lose several hundred of them each summer. So, you know, you'll see a common sight is to have the power lines be put into the canal. They'll be broken in half and put into the Arizona Canal. And I couldn't believe how strong this was. And when I closed my eyes, I remember seeing white lightning bolts. They look like tree branches. Ooh. And I said, I was thinking, what am I in for? I've moved to this new city, and the weather here is incredibly violent. And I thought, okay, so I was a little jittery about lightning and monsoon storms after that for about a year. And I thought, you know, I can't be afraid of these. I can't have this type of jumpiness when there's going to be a monsoon. So I decided to educate myself about lightning, about photographing, and about how the monsoon works, what to expect. Are there tornadoes? At the time, I didn't really know the frequency of tornadoes back then. So I was thinking, oh, there's a tornado coming, you know. And so just that education process, you know, learning how it works. And I had no idea that lightning worked the way it does. I thought lightning comes from the cloud to the ground, but that's not the way it works.
It's the other way around.
And it entices the opposite charges, you know, attract each other. And I didn't know that back then. Well, just the understanding, the fascination that was revealed from this process really led me into, I was already a photographer, so now I was thinking, okay, now I think I'm going to take pictures of this. Now, this took me about a year and a half to get to that point. But back then in 1994, if somebody said, you know, I'd be going to the Great Plains and I'd be photographing the monsoon, and I would say, no way, you know. But that's what happens. Sometimes we work through something and then we end up going down a different, total path in life. And I'm still chasing storms with even more passion about it now than I was back then.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear. You know, common stories that you hear about a lot of storm chasers, particularly devout storm chasers, is particularly when they're younger, they have some type of fear. They have a big fear of anything related to storms and the like. Just
certainly
like
true in my case.
Oh, definitely in my case. I mean, I used to bury my face in the pillows and try to keep from hearing rain just when it started raining. I was so scared.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And now, you know, my kids are 7, and my son's going to be almost 5, and they are glued to severe weather. They are so not afraid of it. It's just unbelievable. And you know, we go from one extreme to the other, and it's quite fascinating. But
it is interesting because when I was a child, I loved lightning. My father actually would drive up to the top of the ranger station lookout towers in the Sierra Nevada and photograph from the mountaintops about 10,000 feet.
Oh, wow!
So when I became afraid of lightning for that short time period, it felt unnatural because I was always the kid under the covers with the flashlight reading the Time Life book about lightning in Switzerland and tornadoes, you know, in China or wherever. I was always in love with weather when I was a kid.
Oh, absolutely. And you were speaking with Susan Strom, lightning photojournalist from Arizona. Now, you was mentioning about the power poles that you go through every monsoon season. Is it fair to say that in Arizona you guys go through the power poles like we do with potholes here in the upper Midwest and the like with every winter and the like? It's kind of what it sounds like.
I have heard a couple statistics. I was talking about 1999 and how we had 92 days of monsoon pattern, and this was very few breaks. This was unusual. I heard a statistic that we lose about 400 power poles each summer in just the Phoenix metro area, and I heard that year we lost about 800. They went down. Yeah, they went down. Those wooden ones went down. They crack and they fall into the canals. And sometimes when I'm chasing in some of the rural areas, and I like to do that because there's no urban heat island effect.
Yeah.
I look up and I watch because a lot of those areas don't have the underground utilities, and so you have power poles, and there is a definite possibility that in a strong gust or a sandstorm, those power poles could go down. I had that feeling out in Apache Junction. That's a city that's way out east of Phoenix. As you start to climb into the Superstition mountain range, they have a lot of those wooden power poles, and I love to shoot out there because it's real western. It's full of ghost towns and, you know, a lot of lore and beautiful mountains, but those power poles make me nervous. I don't want one falling on me.
Not what nobody would. And, you know, that was another thing about the lightning strike that I saw on the 19th of May. Looking back at the video, I actually noticed that right as what they call the stroke leader came out of the lightning, it actually struck the power lines that were to our left. It actually blew a transformer before the main strike.
Did you see the big green explosion?
It really wasn't green. It was almost like there was a camera. You know, when they take your photograph at a studio or something, but it was like way off, and it just flashed real quickly about 2 or 3 times. From a distance.
Wow.
And you could tell it was hitting it because when you pause the video, you could see that stroke coming out. It hit me. It was just amazing. I'll send you a link to it. It's pretty cool.
You were inside the car. Yeah, I'm assuming you were inside of a vehicle at the time.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I wasn't taking a country stroll out there.
I was in
Kansas. That was stupid in more ways than one, I'm telling you.
You know, I was chasing a storm in Kansas about 3 o'clock in the morning one time. There was this beautiful lightning storm because I go to the plains. It's only about a day's drive from here. And there was a power pole that was arcing with the green sparks coming out, and it was crackling. And I thought, I don't know about this. Maybe I'll move a little bit. So I ended up going to downtown Liberal, but there wasn't anybody around because it was about 4 a.m. by the time I got there.
Oh,
it was pretty wild weather.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. Now, with the monsoon storms as well, what have been your experiences with flash flooding out there in the desert?
Flash flooding here is, we have a special law for motorists who drive in Arizona and violate roadblocks to cross flash floodwaters. It's called the Stupid Motorist Law. That's the real name of it.
Okay.
And what that means is that if you ignore a roadblock and you drive through flash floodwaters and you get your vehicle stuck, if you have to be rescued, you have to foot the bill for your own rescue. And it could be several thousands of dollars.
Sounds like a good law.
It's a good law because during the monsoon, the desert does not hold water. It will rush through the arroyos. We call them arroyos here, and it's basically a wash, like a little tributary. And they will fill up within seconds when there's a cloud. Even off in the distance, you have to be careful. And the trick about flash flooding in Arizona, I have a ranger friend who has a saying, if it doesn't prick you, stick you, sting you, or stab you, it is not in the desert. Everything out here has stickers and spines, and it's a very prickly plant, and sometimes these spines can be 2 inches long, you know, the cacti and the different trees. The Sonoran Desert is a very rough place, and with the flash floodwaters, they take the vegetation with them into the arroyos, and along comes the water, but it also contains parts of cactus, brush, mesquite, ocotillo. Ocotillo is what the Mexican cavalry, they used to build barbed wire fences out of ocotillo, natural barbed wire fences for their corrals, because it's got stickers on it. And all this comes washing down the arroyos in a flash flood. And a lot of people don't realize, and the ranch fencing, the real barbed wire that comes, can also be in the water. So if you see a flash flood in the desert, the best thing you can do is just turn around and go the other way, or else if you can't do that, just wait it out, because it will recede. And it's just not worth getting your car into that mess. I sometimes have a problem at night, because sometimes you can't see the flash flood, so you have to be real careful. But I did one time, I did miss when I was driving at night in Carefree, Arizona, and I hit a log that was washing down the roadway.
Ooh. And
it was a piece of mesquite or palo verde, which is a tree that we have out here. And I just want to say, you know, if anyone's thinking chasing monsoon, really the flash flood is not your friend, unless you want to videotape other people driving through it. I've done that, but really it's something that you probably want to stay away from.
Ooh, no doubt about it. But there you go, James. Another one of our guests just adding to the creed. Flash flooding is so dangerous.
Yes, it is.
Oh, yeah. I've seen, well, we've got, here in Muncie, we've got pretty much one viaduct in town, and it floods all the time, and just about any time it's flooded, you can pretty well bet on going down there and finding a car and down in the middle of it that had to be rescued.
Yeah, I think one of the problems we have here is there's a lot of people who living in Arizona who come from somewhere else. And it takes them a year or two before they kind of get the rhythm of the desert and how the flash floods work. And a lot of visitors come here. They like to golf and they like to do the recreation and whatnot. But they're not really familiar with this flash flood is not something you want to be near when it comes. You want to just get out of its way.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Then we are speaking with Susan Strom here on Severe Weather Central. We're going to take our first break here, and when we come back, we're going to continue to talk to Susan about her chasing expeditions and aspects of it, and we'll continue to go on here the program here on Severe Weather Central.
All right, we'll be right back. Stick around. And we're back here on Severe Weather Central, Radio NHCWX. We're with Susan Strom, a lightning photographer, photojournalist from Arizona. One question I have, Susan. Well, first off, I noticed you said you were from Northern California. Actually, my next-door neighbor is from Sacramento.
Yes, I lived in Sacramento for several years.
Yeah, I can certainly understand where you're coming from by seeing the severe weather there in Arizona for the first time. He's been chasing with me several times. He's gotten some 35 tornadoes now with me, but I can certainly remember the reaction on his face the first time he got to see something like that.
Oh yeah. I've driven across country several times, and I just love the storms out in the Great Plains. Absolutely, there's nothing like them. In Sacramento, I look forward. When I lived there, I used to look forward to November and December for the Pacific gales that would come, and they were pretty strong. They would blow all night, and they'd come off the Pacific, and you'd have a lot of wind and horizontal rain, and sometimes the Delta would flood there in Sacramento as well. Pretty rocky coastline.
Yeah, my main question would be about the equipment you need to do that, because I've been a storm chaser for some 12 years now. I've seen over 100 tornadoes, but lightning photography is usually just what I can manage to catch while trying to get other things. So.
Equipment-wise, lightning photography requires rather simple equipment. I have the best luck with manually calculated exposures, slow-speed film, manual cameras, real heavy ones, the older ones that are made out of metal.
Yeah.
You bring a couple of those with you just for redundancy, and you also bring several cable releases because they tend to break real easy.
Yeah.
And then that really heavy, sturdy tripod, like a nice Bogan or something that you can weigh down, even with sandbags, anything to keep it from moving in those winds. And it's kind of an exposure where you are opening the camera up. It's on traditional film and letting the lightning in the foreground paint the picture for you.
Yeah.
And usually if you're combining the lightning and the foreground, you may have multiple elements to expose properly in the same shot. Sunset, city lights, fireworks, artificial lights, or desert, attractions in the desert, mountains. So you have to work with multiple elements at the same time. So I enjoy the manual exposure as opposed to any kind of automatic settings there. And I always shoot on traditional film, slow-speed film, on transparency film. And I like to produce slides with my work.
Yeah. And then, I guess another question. I was out a few years ago with a guy who was a lightning photographer in Indiana. Mm-hmm. Also a night adventure, I guess you could say. And we had to jump in the car real quick because the ham radio antennas started glowing.
Oh.
So what do you usually like to keep as far as a safe distance?
A safe distance? Now, I don't shoot when the storm is right above me. And that's for two reasons. Not only for safety, but also because when I'm composing, I like it to be a little bit further back and bring in the entire storm tower, some of the other elements, like maybe a little bit of a flanking line. Mm-hmm. And that's more of a photographic composition preference than anything else. I find that when the storm is on top of you, you're dealing with the heavy rains, the downpours, and it's, you're dealing with maybe needing to use a wide-angle lens to try to get these huge lightning bolts, and the safety factor is definitely an issue. Here in Arizona, it's a little bit different because even if a cloud is not even approaching thunderstorm stage, even if it's just a cumulus cloud that's building orographically or a pulse-convective high-based beginning of a thunderstorm, you can bet that it's electrified.
Yeah.
You have to prepare, even if it looks, rather benign and pastoral. A lot of times, those smaller clouds are putting out CGs as well. Mm-hmm. So my preference is to be a little bit further back from the storm and bring the whole picture into the elements as a photograph, make the photograph that way, rather than wait until it's on top of me.
Yeah, I definitely know that's for a fact because I was watching a few years back some of Warren Fabley's videos where he was showing a storm tower developing. It wasn't even a storm yet. They didn't have an anvil on there or anything. Mm-mm. And it was over Tucson, and you could visibly see at the top there was lightning forking out of it. There were CGs or cloud-to-ground strikes, as you were mentioning, and no rain coming out. Hadn't even become a storm officially yet. I mean, there's just so much energy and so much charge separation between the cloud and the ground out in there. It's almost like water spouts over the ocean, You don't even have to have a thunderstorm to produce water spouts over the ocean because the water is so warm, it's so buoyant, it lifts so quickly, and you get those rotations there. There's so much heat energy and so much dry air, in essence, that it tends to make that charge separation much greater out there, even without a strong thunderstorm.
It does. And when I was first starting years back, I got tricked a couple of times by those real innocent-looking clouds. They look beautiful over the landscape. There's a separation of charge there, and you have to anticipate the possibility of CGs or bolts from the blue because even if you don't see a rain shaft, even if you don't even see virga, dry thunderstorms is what they're called here, and dry thunderstorms are part of the natural cycle. Prior to monsoon, they're responsible for setting a lot of our desert and forest fires The dry thunderstorms is what actually you'll find this time of year specifically. We're just getting into our fire season, and you'll see a lot of those pulse-type convective systems coming in, not putting out a lot of rain, but getting fires started. And that's just part of nature's energy. Then comes the monsoon later.
Yeah, it most absolutely is, because what happens is you get those storms develop, and there's moisture aloft, but the air is just so incredibly dry below that it just takes one stroke of lightning to get those fires started. Then that problem you have is those forest fires put out so much smoke, they form dry thunderstorms. Just the smoke causes the thunderstorms to develop.
The pyrocumulus. Right. They're pretty amazing looking, and that's all part of the natural cycle. This is the 10-year anniversary of a fire that I experienced when I first moved here, and that really came very close to the northeast part of the Phoenix metropolitan area. It was called the Rio Fire of 1995, and it burned several acres in the lower Verde Valley. That's an area where north and east of Phoenix, past Scottsdale. The Rio Fire is one of Phoenix's famous fires, and it was started by one lightning strike from a dry thunderstorm.
Jeez. Absolutely incredible, and that's all it takes. That's all it takes. It's all it takes for somebody to lose their life too. If you're caught out in the open, people caught out on boats don't get to shore in time. One lightning strike hits them, and some of them don't even know what hit them. They're a very dangerous force of nature, and as beautiful as they are, they got to be taken seriously.
There's a photograph on my website. It's called Caprice, C-A-P-R-I-C-E, and it shows, for some reason, it shows a branch of the lightning channel coming off of the main channel and being attracted to something that's several miles away. I've always tried to kind of figure out how far that was reaching, but it has to be more than 10 miles because distances out here are huge. And I've actually seen lightning reach much further than 10 miles. Just a typical bolt from the blue. And I have a photograph of it going horizontally through the air and coming down miles away from the parent cloud. Just from a dry thunderstorm.
Yeah, that's even though it's rare, particularly in the central part of the United States and in the east, I have seen this happen, where there'll be an anvil. You'll see the anvil, and there'll be, sometimes the storm is over 15, 20 miles away, and there'll be just enough humidity to be like a shower that's like right south of it or something. The one case I'm remembering was in Johnson County back about 15 years ago. And there was a thunderstorm that was over the northern part of the just south of Indianapolis. And I was in a town called Trafalgar, which was about 25 miles south of Indianapolis. And we was just driving along. All of a sudden, bam, just right in front of us, one struck. The shower was gone, but the moisture was still there, and the main storm was to the north. And that had to jump about 20, 25 miles from that storm, and it was out of the anvil. Because it's rare for it to come hit the ground out of the anvil, but it does happen.
It does. And those are some of the most powerful bolts, the ones from the anvil, how they travel down and hit the ground. Some of the most dangerous. All lightning is dangerous, but when you see those and you put those on film, if you go to lightninglady.com and then you click on the image called Caprice, you'll see what I'm talking about. It makes a little kind of a twirly thing, and it shoots way out from that main channel. I couldn't believe it when I got that image back, what lightning can do.
Yeah, because, and maybe both you and James can kind of explain this to me, because and that was, again, lightninglady.com? Lightninglady.com.
Yeah.
So listeners, make sure you check that out. Absolutely. But the thing I'm kind of wondering is, how does that even happen at all? How do you get such a charge separation from a thunderstorm top that could be 50,000 feet high all the way channeling to the ground like that, so far away from a parent thunderstorm? It's always been a mystery to me exactly why that happens.
The average length of a lightning bolt is about 6 miles on average. And it just takes something that's just attractive enough, sends up that streamer of opposite charge, and it just can't resist. It goes right for it. And the problem is, you don't know what that's going to be. Now, out here in the desert, there are a lot of tall, protruding objects, we have a species of cactus here called a giant saguaro, and it's S-A-G-U-A-R-O. The giant saguaro gets over 40 feet tall in the desert, so it looks like a telephone pole. It's kind of the one you see in the cartoons with the arm, you know, Wile E. Coyote cartoons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we have a lot of those out here in the desert, and they get hit every year, as well as the palm trees and some of the other taller plants like the ocotillos, you know, the branching trees. And mountain tops are very jagged here. So there's a lot of things in the natural environment that would attract lightning to the ground. Unlike the plains, when maybe you're the tallest thing around. If you're standing in the middle of Kansas, you might be it.
Yeah, I think that's why we hear a lot of storm chasers out in the plains seeing such close lightning, because, hey, they are the tallest thing out there. And they're like the main target.
That's right. And sometimes everyone's focusing on that tornado or that HP or beautiful LP storm out there in the Texas Panhandle, and you know, they forget that the CGs are right outside your car, and that could be a problem. I don't know if they forget. They probably don't forget about it, but certainly there have been some storm chasers who have had some close encounters with that environment, definitely.
Oh, absolutely. We're speaking with Susan Strom here on Severe Weather Central. Now, you're speaking about with the cactuses and all the type of natural surroundings that you have out there that you have to deal with. What about wildlife? How much dangerous wildlife do you see when you're out there chasing in the deserts?
Wildlife is part of the equation in every storm chase. The best thing to do is when you're chasing the monsoon storms is to expect that you will see at least incredible insect life. You may encounter snakes, you may encounter tarantulas, you may encounter scorpions. I've seen some incredible things. Last year, when I was in Carefree, I was chasing at around 2 in the morning. I always get some good lightning shots at those hours in the morning. And I went into a grove of mesquite. Out here, they're called bosques, B-O-S-Q-U-E. And it's like a grove of mesquite trees. And the wildlife like those because they're cool and they're shady. I heard in the dark what sounded like a cat killing something. There was a lot of growling and a lot of noise and a lot of scuffling, and I thought, you know what, I'm out of here. I'm not hanging around here, because we do have the mountain lions, and we do have bobcats and coyotes, and those are just part of this natural environment. I remember one time I was chasing in Globe, Arizona. That's past the Superstition Range. It's very jagged. It's a mining town. And I pointed my headlights to this wall. This was an incredible thing. I've never seen anything like it. And it looked like the wall was moving. And I thought, what am I looking at? That wall is looking like there's waves coming down it.
Yeah.
So I got closer to the wall. There were 1,000 scorpions coming out of the wall. Now, fortunately, I'm not afraid of spiders and scorpions and snakes. That's not something that bothers me. I've handled them, actually. But, you know, it's something to expect out here in the desert. Scorpions are not something you want to touch. We have kind of a little unwritten rule when you hike out here. If you don't touch it, it can't bite you.
That's good advice.
If you don't want to touch anything, you know, there's a lot of snakes and a lot of spiders, and it's just, this is where they live. And the wildlife out here they have to be tough to live here. But there's a lot of beautiful lizards and monitors. You don't want to touch them. There's some that have a real nasty bite, even though it's tempting. You don't want to mess with them.
Particularly the Gila monster.
The Gila monster. That's one you don't want to touch. When he clamps on, he does not let go. As beautiful as they are, definitely not something you want to handle.
And the only venomous lizard in the United States. They do have a lot of venom. And yeah, I definitely wouldn't want to be trying to shake that off my arm or leg or anything else.
No, a Native American said something really wise about walking in the desert. when you walk in the desert, you want to watch your feet. You want to look at your feet. You don't want to be looking at the scenery, because even though it's tempting, it's beautiful. You want to watch that you're not going to step on any snake, or that you're not going to step into a cactus, or we have a cactus here that's pretty nasty. It's called a cholla, C-H-O-L-L-A. Cholla it has about a 1.5-inch spine on it, and if you run into one of those, you're going to be picking those spines out of your shoes. Not something that you want to encounter. So you want to watch where you're walking all the time when you walk in the desert.
So let's see, we've got scorpions, western diamondback rattlesnakes, coral snakes. And this anything there?
as long as you watch where you're going and not handling the wildlife and not handling the cactus, yeah, you'll be fine. You just have to be aware that they are out there.
Absolutely. I've seen plenty of snakes as well, and turtles seem to be the big thing. I don't know what you've seen mostly on your chases, James, but I know a lot of times when we have severe weather here, and I go, let's say, down to Brown County or Monroe County, down where there's a lot of water and a lot of forest, the main thing I see is turtles around here. Is that what you see, James?
Yeah, in fact, kind of had a close encounter with a turtle once, September 20th, 2002. Got within 2,500 feet of an F2 rain-wrapped tornado that did about $2 million in damage. And actually, we were going south on this road, and it was coming northeast. So we got just out of the path. It passed just behind us. We turned around and started coming back north on this road, and road we'd just gone down. And here's this giant snapping turtle right in the middle of the road, and he couldn't have crawled there that fast. So we're kind of figuring he took flight there for a couple of minutes.
I imagine he wasn't too happy when you saw him.
Probably not.
That's unbelievable.
Because I know I've seen them as big as almost. I'm about 5'10", and I seen one time that basically stood up to my waist. And it was
wow!
If it had bit me, I don't want to know what would happen, because he was not happy when he saw me.
The Gila monster of your area, I guess, huh?
Oh, I'm telling you, he was huge, absolutely huge, and when they're snappers, they don't want you anywhere near them. They want you to get away from them. They will fight back, most definitely. Now we're thinking about the lightning that you photographed. How many tornadoes have you around about seen? Do you know?
I've seen several tornadoes in the plains. Most of the ones I've seen are photographically not yet to what I wanted to shoot. They have been rain wrapped. They have been HPs. I've seen some beautiful structure and some HP and LP storms. But I'm really looking for, one day I'm going to go out and I'm going to get into maybe Texas, Sherman, Texas, or somewhere like that where you have some really nice LP structure and get just a beautiful backlit tornado. I think so many chasers have that goal. They want to have that beautiful stovepipe coming down in the West Texas Panhandle. And I haven't seen one like that yet, but one day I will. I've seen a lot of them that are kind of cluttery and messy, and 12 counties get warned on, and there's problems in... I remember one I was chasing near Muskogee, Oklahoma. It took out 25 homes and a power plant, and it killed someone. And it was a real nasty, just a lot of rain and just messy conditions. And those are the types of storms I've experienced so far. I did get some amazing structure one time in Royal, Nebraska. Actually, on that storm in Royal, I walked out into the middle of a cornfield to photograph, and there was Al Moeller standing right there. And that's how I met Al Moeller.
Oh, okay.
In the cornfield. In
well, that's an interesting place to meet up.
Yeah, kind of a poetic place. And he was just thrilled. Here was this incredible HP mothership storm right in front of us. It was just amazing. At sunset. We couldn't ask for anything more.
The mothership. Take me to your leader.
Take me to the good road.
Those rounded anvils are really just, I got one of those on May 13th of this year over by Lafayette, Indiana. But I certainly do share your goal as far as getting out there for an LP supercell tornado.
There's nothing like those.
Very, very different than what I'm used to seeing. But I never made it that far west when I was out there last year, and I haven't been out yet this year. Furthest west I got last year was around, say, Russell or Pratt, Kansas area. So I hope to get out there, but just didn't quite get that far west.
Well, you got it. It paid off, though.
Yeah, I prefer to chase west of I-35. I love that area, but my favorite place to chase is the Tri-Cities, Liberal, Garden City, and Dodge City, Kansas. The land out there is flat, and it's green, and the storms are just incredible. They come out of southeast Colorado, and it's just an amazing place to chase storms. Just love it.
Yeah, my sister-in-law lives in Hayes, Kansas, out there.
Oh,
yeah. Fact. Yeah, so that's, I think, just south of Concordia, I think?
Around there, yeah.
Yeah, it's around Concordia, I think. Yeah, absolutely. But, yeah, I definitely share that because, as James will attest to, my tornado count is 0. I don't like that.
Well,
see, a lot of lightning, a lot of hail, but no tornadoes. So that's what I was going to ask you. What's the largest hail you've ever seen on your chases?
Largest hail was probably about just a bit smaller than tennis ball. I got on one in Woodward, Oklahoma, near the Panhandle, and the heavy hail came down all of a sudden. And that was actually the greenest storm I have ever seen in my life. It was like a margarita. It was so green. And this mezzo came over, and the funniest thing about that storm that I will never forget is I pulled onto this open lot where this gentleman was working in his shed, and the mezzo was going right over, and I said, "Oh, do you mind if I drive to the back of your property, because I'm chasing this mezzo and I'm out of road options." And he's like, he looked at me like I had 5 heads or something. He looked at me like, "What?" And so I said, "Come on out and look." And when he looked up, you should have seen his face. He had no idea that this mezzo went right over to the shed where he was working. And it was the hail was really heavy, but he was busy in there with some kind of a bandsaw, and he was working, and he wasn't paying attention. And I shot that storm. It had an amazing tail cloud, and it just had a perfectly round mezzo, and it was green. It was Kermit the Frog green, I remember.
That sounds just beautiful, just absolutely beautiful. Well, I've got one more question for you, Susan, and we're going to kind of let you go for now. I'm sure we could talk for 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 hours, but unfortunately we got a time limit. But the question I have for you is, you made a very interesting comment on your bio, and that comment was, "My desire is to present the storm unchanged." Could you kind of explain to the listeners what you mean by that?
The most important thing in my photography is that I'm shooting exactly how it happened the best I can. I don't make any changes to the photo at all. I want people to look at it and almost like they're standing right there watching it. And almost to the point where I won't even shoot like multiple lightning strikes, when you see 50 lightning strikes all at the same time, because I want to present it exactly how it would happen, in the most natural way. And sometimes that can be an inconvenience. There have been times when I've had a shot and there's been a tiny little obstruction or a tiny little distraction, like a street pole or something like that, and I'm like, oh, if I only took that out, that would be the perfect shot. But I don't. I leave it all in there. It has to be exactly as it happened, like photojournalism, for it to appeal to me. I want it to be natural.
Absolutely, and my wife would appreciate that as well. She is a journalist teacher at a high school in northwest side of Indianapolis, so she knows that she would appreciate that very, very much. And I'm sure you two would have nice conversations about journalism because she's obsessed with journalism. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
That was part of my major in college was journalism, and I just feel that if you're going to shoot it and present it like this is the real storm, that it should be untouched in Photoshop. You shouldn't put anything in it or change it in any way. That's just the way I choose to work.
Good deal. Good deal. What college did you go to for journalism?
California State University at Sacramento. Part of my degree was journalism. A lot of it was photography. There was some graphic design, kind of a graphic design, journalism, and photo. I ended up in the magazine trade for several years. That's what I did. I was a magazine editor in Sacramento.
Good deal, good deal. Susan, you've been an awesome guest. We definitely appreciate having you on the program. We definitely want to have you back on the program. We definitely want to keep you apprised of what we're doing here and what you're doing, and work together on what you're doing to get the word out. And we just thank you so very much for being on the show tonight. And James, do you have anything for Susan before we let her go for the night?
Not that I can think of at the moment. But
I made sure to let the Storm Chasers know about your station. I think your station is amazing. The first, I tuned in and I heard that conversation that, was it Jeff Masters was talking about the flight that he took through the hurricane? That was
on Talking Tropics earlier this week, I think.
That was incredible.
Dr. Jeff Masters from the Weather Underground. Yeah, that was on Mike Watkins' Talking Tropics show. Great show as well. Yes, absolutely.
I turned that on and I was glued. You know, he's thinking, oh, if this engine goes, I'm not going to possibly make it. So I posted your link on stormtrack.org/forum because I think it's just a really neat radio station that you have.
Absolutely, and I think a lot of them came over tonight because we had quite a few listeners all the way through the broadcast, even though it's midnight on the East Coast, so which is just absolutely fascinating. We definitely appreciate the work that you're doing and for helping us out and just taking such a great interest in weather. I think a lot of people will follow suit.
Oh, thank you so much. It was my pleasure to be on. Appreciate it.
All right, Susan. You have a good night, and we'll be talking to you soon, okay?
Thank you. Anytime.
You have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
All right, we'll take a quick break, and I'll be right back here on the Severe Weather Central, Radio NHCWX.
Severe Weather Central brought to you in part by Vonage, the broadband phone company.